Hi, Andrew. I want to be able to talk with you about your paper a little bit, get a feel for what you need to either improve or polish uh, for the sake of making this into a good paper. Um, as I'm looking at this right now, you've got some sweeping and broad statements in your first paragraph still, stuff that I thought I'd ask you to take out previously. When you say boys like violent games and girls like fantasy violence, again, do you have any proof to back this up, or is this just anecdotal assertions? Are you talking about something that seems to be happening in your house and amongst your friends? If so, you need to say that, because otherwise it makes it sound like you're just trying to speak for everybody at all times. And then we come down here, it says some shootings and other acts of crime have been traced back to violent video games, which asks the question, should kids be allowed to play video games? I think that's a perfectly good way to approach this, but can you provide me with a little bit more context, I suppose? Like, when has this been going on? Are there any specific instances that you want to discuss? Some case studies, perhaps, that you're going to pull up. Again, just be more specific here. Then you jump down to this question of addiction. Addiction isn't something that you've brought up to this point, but now you're talking about how kids can potentially be addicted to video games. What is that? How are these things related? Does addiction then cause people to want to express the thing that's in the game more often? So I'll give you an example. Do people that get addicted to playing Tetris want to stack everything that they see? Do they walk around just grabbing boxes and trying to put them in piles? I'm not sure that one is necessarily related to the other. It seems like maybe there's a problem here between the issue of correlation and cause. There are two types of addictions, single-player games and multiplayer games. Are these types of addictions? Do you have anything to back this up? Or are these just two types of video games and first-player video games in particular that you want to try and discuss? I'm not sure that your language here isn't problematic. Let's go ahead and fix this. Now, mental signs, including isolation from the world, lying to friends, blah, blah. These things right here. This is good. Are you, instead of saying whether or not kids should be allowed to play video games because it might make them aggressive and violent, are you actually trying to say that video games are addictive in the same way perhaps that cigarettes or gambling can be addictive? If that's what you want to argue, then I think there's something really interesting there that you can potentially discuss. Not that video games and violence is not interesting. There's stuff that you can do there as well. Only that I think that addiction, because there's an actual criteria for what addiction is, you can look it up in the DSM, that if you think about addiction, and what it is, and then if you think about the way that people interact with video games, you could then make assertions about whether or not video games have the potential to actually be addictive. So I think there's a little bit more right there that you could go with. Okay, so as we come down here and you start to actually try to find a academic paper, video games violence, I'd like to know, this doesn't come from Gale Education. Who are the authors that are associated with this, and what are they trying to say? This is coming out of the Journal of American Medical Association. Great, that's telling me the journal, but again, who is this? And what is it they're arguing exactly? And then what's the connection? You say this statement holds true for Dylan and Eric Harris. Kids see violence in the games and believe it's okay. Do you have any quotes to support that? Anything that can back this up? Great. This does help to make that connection right there. Wonderful. This is good. Do you have any other examples? I'd like a little bit more at this right here. Jumping down to Grand Theft Auto, I think, is also a good place to go. A lot of people had talked about that game when it first came out. And then jumping into a Time magazine article. Good. I think this is also appropriate. Oh, and then here's another example of a good case study that can be talked about, this one associated with Halo. Good. All right. So these examples that you have down here at the end, I think, are wonderful, but I'm not sure where addiction falls into this. What I see you talking about here is questions of violence. If you want to talk about issues of addiction, you're going to have to find some way to tie this in for me, Andrew, because I don't think these 2 points have been connected very well. In general, I think that you've got some good ideas right here. I would really like to see you open up these case studies a little bit more and be, and here's the word, articulate about how these case studies connect to the question of violence. If you can't draw quotes that directly tie these things together, the question becomes, do they tie together? Anyway, there's a lot of stuff here for you to consider. I think that you've done some good work, but again, you need to try to tie some of this together and maybe think about getting rid of this question of addiction. I'm just not sure that it's appropriate. Talk to you later.